this is a very familiar passage of Scripture, but it's got some things in it that I hope that might be of benefit to you, to kind of make us think. You know, the Word of God is the teaching is so deep and profound that it really doesn't make any difference how much education you've got or how many degrees or whatever. It is a book that will teach anybody. It'll teach some of us a lot and anybody a little. On the same day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." And when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was. And other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, "Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Who can this be? In these just a couple of verses here, there's several questions that are asked that are just, and by the way, since I kept you over a couple of minutes at the morning service, I'm going to turn you loose at 1:15. Both my children are leaving, catching planes this afternoon, and I wanted to spend a little time with them. And I didn't think you would complain if I quit 15 minutes early. I thought about it. Yeah, they'll all be upset if I quit. And I thought, no, they won't. So let's take this few minutes here. Listen to some of the questions in here. Maybe you've thought about it like this. And they awoke and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And they said that, why? Because what was he doing? He's sleeping. He's sleeping. You know, to me, that was a silly question. This last week, I got up in the middle of the night, and when I started to get back in the bed, I stepped on something, and it caused me to lose my balance, and I fell, and I lodged between the end of the bed and there's like a bench at the end of it, and it was pitch black dark in the room, and I was stuck in there, and I could not get up. So it woke Jackie up when I hit the floor, I guess. And so she says, and I said, I've fallen, I need help. She said, "Do you want me to turn the light on?" I said, "No, I just want to try to do this in the dark. See, it'll be a lot more interesting that way." I said, "Yes, I want you to turn the light on. I can't see a thing." So she gets up, she comes over there, and I'm laying there like this, and I said, "You need to help pull me up?" She said, "Well, I got to go to the bathroom first. You wait right there. I'll be back." This is what I put up with. You know, these goofy questions, to me, that's what the disciples, don't you, what was it they said? "Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing?" Such a foolish question. Do you want me to turn the light on? But I guess people have always asked things like that. Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Now that would have been something to see, wouldn't it? I know we're all in this group, we're all old enough. We've seen some bad storms in our life. We've all lived long enough to have seen some bad ones. I mean, the ones that scared us, that we didn't know what was going to happen, what was going to get destroyed or blown away. We've had a couple of major tornadoes in this county since I remember. That first bad one in the 70s, I didn't even know it had happened. We were having a meeting here, and we had a busload of kids that we were delivering home. And I got home, and then I didn't even know about the tornadoes until later on in the night. And the one that we had recently that just came right across Crescent Drive here, I didn't even know that it had happened. I got up to go to work the next morning, and there's some limbs and stuff down up here. When I got to the Highway 70 down there, I didn't even know where I was. I mean, there were buildings, trees, and that George Loftus's house was down there at the intersection the day before, and then it's up in the top of trees down at the end of Crescent Drive the next morning. The power, and to think Jesus simply said, "Peace, be still." And I thought about this passage right here in another context. And hopefully you're not like this. You don't get upset, aggravated, fuming. I hope you don't ever do that. I occasionally do that. And I was thinking this verse right here, I am going to try to remind myself when I get upset about something, just say these three words: peace, be still. That's it. No big long speech, no big mouthful of words, just peace, be still. I'm just wondering how many times in my life, and in Paul Zusma's life there, that if I'd have said that, I would have been better off. Physically, financially, spiritually, socially, every way, peace, be still. When I get ready to say something when I'm upset, or get ready to do something when I'm upset. Do you make good decisions when you're mad and upset? Do you, Paul? I went to school with an old boy that had an uncontrollable temper. And he's out putting a roof on his house, and it's dark. And he's trying to nail shingles on in the dark. And he hits his finger with a hammer. And it made him mad. He turns around and he throws the hammer down in the field next to it in the weeds. And he just starts throwing stuff. And in the midst of all that, he throws this ring of keys. And he's sitting up there on the roof in the dark, and he realizes he can't even get in his own house now. So he has to go to his neighbor and get him to bring a flashlight. They're out there down on their hands and knees in the weeds after dark, trying to find his keys so he can get in the house. I'll tell you what, isn't the temper a wonderful thing? Oh, peace, be still. And then the next thing, but he said to them, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? Well, why? Why did he take that as a show of a lack of faith that they're so amazed that he could say, peace, be still, and quiet the storm? Why did he interpolate from that, you don't have very much faith? Was it because they were amazed that he could do that? I mean, what were they expecting? Because he is the Son of God. He's been telling them that to them, but they seem to not have grasped what that really meant. I think if we did a little sober recollection, we would find ourselves at times forgetting who God really is. I keep thinking back to the COVID, the pandemic, that we were convinced that everything was in the hands of these great scientists, these men of science is going to find this magic vaccine that when you take one shot, you won't ever have to worry about that again. Anybody here had COVID 3 times now that had the shots? Me, you, yeah. Hey, great men of science. You take one shot, silver bullet. You won't ever have to worry about it again. No, not till you get it again. And I thought a week or so ago I had it the 4th time. It loves me. Great men of science. And yet we were sitting back here thinking, the great men of science are going to take care of this. God, this is one that he can't handle. It's too big for him. It's worldwide. He can't handle this. We'll have to depend on the scientists to figure this out. God is not in control of this. I'll tell you, the very instant that we get to thinking that way about anything, we need to ask God for his forgiveness. The fact that we cannot see the things that are around us from the right perspective and from God's view and from a scriptural point of view just gets us into all kinds of bad thinking. You all, I'm sure, have heard that the methadone clinic, they passed it just like that.
It's going to be a mess.
Now, the thing of it is, that's not over with yet. It's not over with yet. But it looks like there's something that's a bad thing, in my opinion. People that have drug problems, they need all the help they can get, but they're not getting help to give a person a drug to get off of another drug. It's addictive too. Yeah, Paul.
I had a little bit of dealing with that person. I wasn't on that doctor, but I know a guy who mentioned his name. He called me and he says, Paul, I need some help. I need it right now. I said, okay. This is what happened. And he got on methadone. The guy he was living with
I'll tell you, the drug problem in this country is just, it's out of control. It's out of control. And then we think the way to get it under control is to give people another drug that's as addictive or maybe more so than the one they're trying to get them off of. Look in the next verses there. And they feared exceedingly and said one to another, who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? And let's finish on this thought right here. Who is Jesus that even the wind and the sea obey him? Who is God that the same thing, or the Holy Spirit that the same thing can be said about? You know, I think we think of deity, of the Godhead, of the members of the Godhead in an unscriptural way so many times. And it seems like that we want to think of God in terms of the terms that we think of a government official or some important person, or we don't think about God in the proper light. I was looking, let me see if I can lay my hands on it. If you would turn over to the first chapter of Romans. I hadn't even noticed this. I was reading something that brought it to my attention in the first chapter of Romans. I'd been missing the main thing in it. If I could just get out of Acts and get into Romans, I might be able to find it. In Romans chapter 1, there's just tremendous amount of information in it. But beginning in verse 18, where it talks about God's wrath on unrighteousness. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. But look at verse 19. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. Now, Paul is saying that in each person there is the ability to know God. There oughtn't to be an atheist anywhere on the earth. For he said, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. And, of course, we think in terms of the things of nature, the orderliness of the universe, all those things. To think that there is not some creator, some designer, some greater force behind that, none of that would even make sense. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. That his invisible attributes are clearly seen. What attributes of God do we clearly see from nature and the universe? Well, those are products of it, but what does that creation show us about one of the attributes of God? What'd you say, Gary? We can't see God, but we can see God's, Paul says, we see his attributes. We see what kind of God that he is. let me ask you, is the universe orderly? I mean, we know, or the so-called scientists tell us, that all these things are so intricately put together that a change in 1 degree or even less than that, and we would have total destruction in the universe. It is so precise. There's not a Swiss watch that's made that is precise as the movement of the planets and all those things. They're all held in place. The orderliness of it, the design of it, the intelligence behind it, the creativity of it, all show the attributes of God. And then he said, he said, then they're without, so they are without excuse. When you see all that and you recognize that and know that there's some power beyond that that's so much greater than we could even think about. To ignore and deny that, Paul said, we are without excuse. We cannot excuse ourselves because of ignorance then. Because although they knew God, they knew of the existence of God. And I think I've misinterpreted this passage a little bit. Although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful. It's one thing to know God and say that, yeah, there is a God. But Paul's talking about people who say, well, yeah, there is a God, but there's that but. Oh, if there's a God, then we are subject to that God, and we need to search out that God, and we need to worship that God. Whether we know it or not, there are no people that don't worship. Everybody worships something in some way. You think, no, I know all kinds of people. They don't believe in God. They don't do this. They don't ever go to church. Well, we've got maybe a confused idea of what worship is. I know some folks that have built some of the biggest altars to money and to wealth that you can imagine. Because a person doesn't worship the true God doesn't mean that they don't have a God that they worship. I was watching parts of about 50 of the football games that were on yesterday. It's amazing, people that drive 500 miles and pull a camper and all that and spend no telling how much money, and they do that every week to go and watch a football game. I like to watch them on television, but I'll tell you what, they'd be looking hard for me if they were on television, because to do all of that is like having another job. And they do it every week, year in and year out. And while we're sitting here this morning talking about Romans chapter 1, they haven't even thought about God or his creation, or the ability that they have to enjoy themselves doing something like that. Maybe we have a perverted understanding of who our God is and what he actually does for us, and all the different ways that we ignore him and we don't give him the glory that he is due. Do you do that? I know I don't. I know I don't. Somebody asks you, how's your business? Oh, we're having a great year. Never even mention, boy, God has really blessed me this year and last year and the year before. So thankful. Never even mention it. Boy, we did this and did that. We raised our prices and we cut our costs and we bought a new piece of equipment and we're just doing a lot better this year, making a lot more money. God doesn't even get into the conversation. It's like, we're doing all this on our own. I hope the Lord's getting along up there all right. In case we need him next year if something bad happens. You know, he's like an umbrella. We don't need him unless it rains. How do you reckon God feels about that? That, God, we don't need you. It's not raining today. I'm going to put you back in the trunk. Maybe a little warm back there, but we don't need you today. Not today. How do we get out of that? Don't know how do we get out of a habit like that? How do you break any habit?
You keep continuing on and giving God glory and blessings from God and continue saying that. You know, first you fake it until you really make it. You know, you may not believe it at the time, but you continue on and think about how God treated the Israelites when they weren't very thankful.
What we have to think our way into a better way of acting. Because it's not like a lightning bolt that hits us. We got to think about it, and we have to think about it often and earnestly and move ourselves into a better way of acting. It's how you change a habit. It's not just like a lightning bolt hits you. It's a struggle. It's an effort. It's work. Yeah, Paul.
Closest to God when we need him most. So, it's one of them deals like, because when you need God very strongly, then you're very, you much into prayer and into reading the Bible and because you need him the most. But when you don't need him, life is good. My mom always said she didn't hear from me about every 3 weeks. She knew life was great. I started calling all 3 days in a row. She goes, what's going on? You know, because do you think God looks at us because life is going good? Like, that's a bad thing?
But here's the wonderful thing about God. There is no changing with God. He is a constant. We're the ones that are moved by events and everything. God is constant in his attributes. God is not happy because we've had a good day. God is unchangeable, unmovable, and unshakable. God, he needs absolutely, he is sufficient within himself. He does not need a single thing that we have. We think, well, God needs our appreciation. No, we need to show God our appreciation. He doesn't need our appreciation. We need to show our appreciation. We got the horse, and the horse is in the wrong place.
Yes.
Speaking in the wrong place, I'm sitting in this chair. I need to get here before an airplane leaves going to Washington and New York. Thank you for being here this morning. Hey, who else gives you? Well, it was going to be 15 minutes, and that's just 10.